Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining. Is it workshop 6? I can't remember now. Workshop 6 of the Academy. 6 or 7, I'm not too sure, but we well into kind of the bulk of the Academy. In general, a few updates. Please keep going to the Zeitgeist prediction market, voting, spreading that to your community, to your audience. It's been really, really good. It's been a big success. I think Zeitgeist have learned a lot from it, so they've been really appreciative as well. We got 2 workshops this week. We got Hoon, and then we have another one later in the week, Mythical Games around player-to-player economies, where they've done quite a bit of research, Mythical in particular. And then the week after that, we've got 3 workshops. We've got Anamaka on the Monday. We've got Ajuna on the Tuesday, and then we finish off with the guy Gautam. He was kind of in charge of the migration from Mythical, from an Ethereum private chain to Polkadot. So it'll be really, really interesting. He's got some really good insights as well. In general, we'll be telling you on the 12th of April, which is next week, Friday, who are the teams that we are going forward with. Very, very sad. I said I'd love to take all of you, and I'm the worst person at picking all of this. So we're kind of going to defer it off to Mythical and let them decide. So Scytale actually won't really be deciding. We'll be kind of sitting with them, helping a little bit. But yeah, hopefully you've all got a lot out of it regardless. I think it's been pretty insightful. Our speaker, Hoon, was the actually CTO at Astar, where quite a few of you are building. So really, really interesting. He's built out actually the governance kind of at Astar, is in the process of building it. I'm sure he'll speak about it a little bit more. But he has kind of left the Astar Foundation and he started his own project called Team Step, which is really, really cool. He's got a lot of insight into kind of Web3, building out a blockchain, but then also how this ties into various games. So he's got a lot of cool insights. So please, any questions, just raise your hand, start speaking. Hoon will answer. I'll always have questions as usual if everybody's embarrassed to get the flow going. But generally, you guys are really, really good and quite an engaging audience. But Hoon, thank you so much for joining, and over to you. Very, very excited to have you here.
All right, thank you so much for having me here, and welcome, guys. It's great to see so many audience here. So just to check first, so can you guys see my screen, and is everything clear?
Yep, we can see it and it's all clear, and we can hear you clearly as well.
Perfect. And my internet might be a little bit unstable at some points, so please keep that in mind because A, I'm in Germany, bad infrastructure. B, I have a server benchmark running in the background, and I have a limited bandwidth. So yeah, if I lose connection, just shout because probably I will not be able to hear that. Now let's get started. So initially the session was going to be about using Web3 for community engagement, but I want to expand a little bit more and make it a bit more generic. Why? Because while I was doing further research for this session, I realized that when it comes to Web3, a lot of people sort of put themselves in a trap where they limit themselves because they're Web3. They have to do this and this and this. So I wanted to expand on this and break that that boundaries for you guys and talk about community as a whole. So let's get started. Let's see. Yep. So Jake already introduced me, but I'll go a little bit deeper about myself. My name is Hoon Kim. I was the former CTO of Astar Foundation and one of the initial creators and contributors behind the protocol Astar Network, as Jake mentioned. And now the founder and CEO of Team Step, which started out as an indie game studio and now becoming something that's way more bigger than just the studio. And I'm one of the early Polkadot developers. I was passionate about indie game development since I was 14. In fact, that's how I actually started programming and learned about business and everything. Of course, I'm a chronic game addict as well, so I'm trying to recover from that. But now the Helldivers 2 is just too good to recover from. But that aside, let's go into the agenda. So we have quite a lot to cover, but I tend to make the session a 45-minute one, so don't worry. And here the session is divided into 2 main parts. One would be the high-level theoretical approach, and the second half would be the practical explanation behind all this. And of course, we'll have a mid Q&A because I do believe it's easier to learn when everyone's more interactive and they actually say the things that they're listening to. So yeah, let's jump right in then. So first, let's address the most important part, how the game industry is changing. Because it's not as it was like when you first started playing games. When back in the early years, when the gaming industry was first started, and even until like as recently as I would say like almost 10 years ago, uh, the gaming industry was really a product first market. It's like any other retail industry where you create a product, you sell it out to retail stores, and people buy it. The name of the game was to maximize units sold, try to reach as many shelves and platforms as possible. Uh, and it was really tried to increase the one-time high price payment amount that comes from the consumers. However, with the advancements of internet and smartphones, meaning that technology became much more accessible and reliable, and we have continuous deployment strategies, the industry kind of changed a little bit. Instead of just relying on one-time sales, now we're thinking about a fun fair approach. No, games are no longer just a single product, but they're an entire platform on its own. So the idea is not to sell as many games to the people, but to maximize the user time within your platform or within your fun fair, this analogy, and let people buy as many add-ons as possible that you've set up in your fun fair. And just like a fun fair, players would initially pay the price of admission, the ticket, and then you could buy additional add-ons or anything that would enhance your experience. So the key metrics here would be the to maximize player value per player. So for a single player, how many purchases can they make? Back in the old days, it was just the theoretical maximum was the price of the game. That's how much a studio could make. If they wanted to make more, they had to release more games or an expansion pack. However, now there is no theoretical limit to how much a single person can buy, which could also lead to a lot of unethical practices in gaming. Um, but the whole point is to reach as many individuals as possible. It's no longer just hitting the shelves. And it's also a more low-cost, high-volume transaction approach, i.e., microtransactions. So when so as this as we're seeing a new trend in the gaming industry, of course, strategies, approach, and metrics that you want to look for will change. And here are some of the very most important metrics that I've come to find throughout my experience in not just this industry, but really any industry. And here's the second part of the session. Yeah, important metrics for all studios. And I say studios here because this session is really geared towards game studios. However, it's really for any online e-commerce business, I would argue. So for any business, there are only two pillars that you really want to maximize. And this is really you as a manager, as a developer, as a creator, this is how you maintain your business. And that is to understand your cost and how to extract value from your investment. So as long as you know these two pillars, like and how to reduce the cost while increasing the value, then you know how to operate a business. And in fact, that's literally what business is in general. And now going down to the specifics, like how did the metrics change and what are the relevant cost metrics and value metrics in the gaming industry as it is right now? For the cost, first one would be the user acquisition cost, or short for UAC. And this is, as the name implies, the cost of requiring a single user. And this is heavily tied to the marketing expense that you're going to spend. If you pay, for example, for a Facebook ad, how much did you spend for that ad, and how much people actually obtain, or sorry, how much people did actually buy something? Um, not just buy, but being actually making an account and being part of your ecosystem. Of course, purchase will come later, and that's where cost per purchase comes in as well. So you have the UAC, which is just to acquire the user to play your game, but there's also a cost that's involved to actually make that user pay for something in your product, and that's where the cost per purchase or CPP comes from. And cost per purchase is hard to search on online because if you just search CPP, you'll always get C++. But so remember cost per purchase, the full name. And now in the value side, what you want to explore is the return on ad spent, or ROAS, or ROAS, as the industry would call it. This metric, quite straightforward as well. Basically, how much return in total did you get from the ads you spent? And this is, of course, like highly tied to the add-ons that that your users or players can purchase, and then that contributes to the bottom line. Another value function or metric would be the user lifetime value, or ULV, which is another very important metric. This is pretty much like how much cost you can quote unquote extract from a player over the entire lifetime of that player within your game. And I mean, I'm not going to go too much detail into like how to actually calculate all these metrics in this session, because A, that's something that the business schools teach in general, but B, probably can easily search it on your own. And C, it heavily depends on the type of business and the game that you're working on. So it's hard to kind of generalize it in the most effective way, in my opinion. But overall, what I want you to know is when operating a studio, a business, always think of the two pillars and these four metrics. These are the most important part. And even if you forget everything on this presentation, as long as you know the UAC, CPP, ROAS, and ULV, you'll know at least where to start from, or what metrics you should be focusing on when creating your product and launching that. And now here comes the importance of community. So as you can see from the important metrics that I pointed out, it's really a matter of how do you reach out to your potential players, and how do you turn that potential player into an actual player, and how do you convert that players into a paying player. That's the name of the game when it comes to the modern industry. And this is where community is very powerful. You can sort of already guess like how community plays a role, but just to put it like just to make it explicit, see, it's been proven that to increase the ULV and ROAS for within your product lifespan, you want to continuously deliver new features. And what this means is you want your players to stay engaged for your game or things that you're making, and hence why a lot of studios, especially bigger ones like the typical AAA studios that like EA and Ubisoft, their focuses are really on live service games and feature treadmills. So it's really about the internal optimization, which is also one of the sad reality about a lot of the layoffs that we've been seeing in the industry, is also part of this, is to optimize the internal process as much as possible. However, if you try to do this on your own as a company, it's gonna get boring really soon, and also unsustainable, and it's not gonna really be as effective as making this with the community, because the community is really the lifeblood in here. So what does it mean to have a community? Why is it so important in this case? To put it shortly, having a strong community basically means you have a lower CPP and the UAC, while you also have more prolonged ULV and ROAS same time. These are the main, well, I mean, one of the main. Of course, there are way more benefits of having a strong community, but one of the main, main quirks of having a strong community, and why you want to build one for your studio. So now let's move on to the next section, which is actually understanding these communities. Like what is a community? How do you define that? What makes a good community? And how can you even make one, right? So let's define community first. Now, according to dictionary.com, community is defined as a social group of any size, that has a specific location and a physical location, shares the same governance, and often have a common culture and historical heritage, meaning that you have a common topic, something that keeps you together, but also in touch, basically. And also they're to be inhabited by such a group. So that's what a community is essentially. However, we should redefine this for the modern day, especially for our use case, because we're no longer bounded by the physical limitations, right? We have transcended. So let's think about internet communities. What does an internet community mean? And based on the definition of community, I've created our own definition for the sake of this session, and that would be internet community would be defined as a group of people who share a common topic to discuss and actively interact with others in the group. Now, here, very important metrics are common topic and interacting with others in the group. That's what defines a community. You can think of any community or group of people on the internet that you can think of, and what makes them bond as a community, because they share a common topic, but also they want to proactively interact with others, sharing content, memes, tips, whatever. That's what makes a community. So you, as a studio or a community manager, or someone who wants to deliver on this, like extract the value from translate that from the community activity to your studio value. What you want to do is understand or set the common topic, understand and clearly define how people should interact with each other. And based on those aspects, you want to convert that into ULV and UAC. So now, going into starting a community, first thing you want to know is no one can really create a community, because keep in mind, no one can own a community. That's the whole point. You're not supposed to own it, and if you try to own it, then that's where backlash would happen. And back later in several chapters later, I will also explain some of the bad examples of how people tried to own a community and failed miserably. However, you can always start a community, and anyone can do this really, as long as you have a good topic and a place to communicate with others. So how do you start a community? That's the $1 million question here, and that is, start by creating a vision. Always keep a consistent vision of what kind of community you want to be part of. What kind of community should people should you have that represents your game and your work? Because as much as games could be seen as a product for a company, games are also artwork, and it's also your baby. So of course you want to have a clear, the right people to interact with in the right way that you envision, because it is the byproduct of your vision, right? So think of it like that. Community is also an extension of your game. So now, what do I mean by creating a vision? So let's dive deep a little bit more. So first thing is, what kind of people should join your community? Do you have a specific genre preference, or I don't know, a political compass stance, or any opinion on a specific matter, whatever it could be? But just clearly define what kind of people you expect to be part of that community that you're starting. And next point is what should the community talk about? This is also referring to the topic. And as I mentioned, in an internet community, two important things: setting up the topic and how people interact with each other. So the what is covering the topic side, and always think of what topic your community should revolve around. If it's the Polkadot community, of course, the topic would always be around, most likely, governance nowadays, but it is fundamentally about Polkadot, right? So for your game, I would imagine it should be about your game. But having said that, a single community does not necessarily need a singular topic. It could also have multiple topics. They're not mutually exclusive, but just make sure that you know what the topic you want the people to talk about. Next is how. So how should people discover the community? And this is not just talking about advertisement or reaching out. I'm talking about how should people actually find your community engaging, or how should people in your community spread the word to other people as well? So, and this could go much deeper. But what's important here, the bottom line is that you should expect how your community is exposed to the broader internet. And it could be through events, it could be through offline presence, or online presence, or just through word of mouth. But you want to really clarify that. And where should the conversation happen? This is regarding the platform. of where the community should interact with. And this also covers the second point of what defines a community, interacting with others. And of course, the where part will highly depend on the who, what, and how, because of course, depending on what kind of people, what kind of people or what kind of topic that they're discussing, the channel and the platform should also accommodate for that. And that's where the second half of the slide comes in, which is what is the focus of the community, and talking about the topic. But here, this is also about, I'm talking about the type of a community as well. Like, what is the main activity and operation that your community should be doing? If you define the who, what, and how, and where, then now you should know that is your community more of a supportive type. For example, tech supports that you see in various forums, whether it be Astar Discord server or Polkadot, the Stack Exchange, even Unity forums. If you have a question, and you can you should be everyone should feel welcome to not only ask their question, but also post a response and help each other out. That would be a supportive community. And these are mostly useful for tech-heavy products. So if you're, let's say, creating an entire game engine or an editor for other developers to use, then of course you as the creator should know the most. And you would expect you to be the first person to sort of answer all these questions, but you want to have a platform that allows other people, anyone, to not only add their own questions, but also add on and answer other people's questions. So the moment you as a creator doesn't have to be part of the whole like tech support process, and your community is able to provide these tech supports on behalf of you, that's when you know your community is growing, and that's the direction that you want to be. And the other type of community would be the UGC, or user-generated content-driven community. So these are sort of the, I guess, ideal form of community in the modern world, or at least what the business will want you to think. And UGC-driven communities, like what are some examples? It would be something like, I don't know, a meme subreddit on Reddit, like r/memes or r/dank memes, which I was banned for whatever reason. Those communities, they are driven by the content that other people create, because you want to engage with all the memes or whatever content that they're sharing, news, and people like to talk about what they make, but also what other people make, right? And UGC-driven communities. Another example in the gaming world would be something like Roblox, where you create your own games, plugins, whatever, and you want to share that and talk about that. That's also UGC-driven community. And of course, since I brought Roblox here as an example, you can also see how it could be the support-driven community, where if someone has a question about how to build their own game in Roblox, someone else that's not from the Roblox team answers that technical question. That's when the support-driven community kicks in. So yeah. And the other type of community would be the events community, or event-driven community. In this case, it's a community where they have periodic events that constantly push them to perform a certain action, to be engaged. What are some good examples? Well, I guess it's hard to have a concrete example for this one, because or like a specific game project, because it's mostly like a derivative community, that from my understanding. For example, like Minecraft, where they have like a bunch of Discord servers for friends to just play with each other, and that's like an event-driven kind of a community, but that has nothing to do with Microsoft or Mojang, right? And of course, I will also go into like derivative communities briefly later on as well. But the idea for event-driven community is that the community always has something that engages other people to perform something, right? And to give like a general example would be, name an NFT community that just launched. They might want to have a multiple forms of airdrops or some sort of like community gathering. That would be like an event-driven community. And every type of community has its own benefits and disadvantages as well. So, for example, support-driven communities, obviously they're really great for technical products, and it's also the easiest kind to start, because if you created that editor or the engine or the blockchain, you probably have the most knowledge than other people who want to build that. So you, as the creator, can be part of the community to kickstart things off, and at some point, it would sort of go on its own with other people who has the same knowledge or more knowledge than you, can answer and help each other out. So fairly easy to start and roll out. However, it's also limited when it comes to its reach. UGC, on the other hand, is the other way around, where it's like really effective in getting other external people into your community, because hey, it's a content that someone else created about a specific topic, and if it's good, then of course, even if you're not a fan of that original topic, you'll still consume that content that the community created. Like, think of a fanfic websites, or yeah, just memes leaking out of Reddit to Twitter. Like you see memes about something that you're not really interested in, but after looking at that and you have fun, you want to look more into it, and then boom, you're already indoctrinated. So that's how sort of UGC, how sort of a UGC driven community works. However, the problem here is it's kind of hard to start like in an organic way, because if you try to like push this as a company, while you also have like a dedicated PR team, you'll become what the kids call cringe, because you're trying to like fit in with the cool kids, and trying to get more engagement and virality. But just like viral marketing, it's not something you can definitely analyze it, and you can have a really good educated guess on how to start it, and you can encourage it, but you can never really like start it and thrive on it from start to finish. Um, so that's one limitation that you want to really like consider. An event-driven one is it's also quite powerful in terms of like having a growth hack, acting as a growth hack for your community, because you've got events that makes people engaged. Imagine like having a regular playtesting session within your Discord community members, and depending on how much sessions they joined, you'll have like an evolving NFT or level up systems within Discord itself. Like that's the type of like effective growth hack that event-driven communities can provide for your community. However, another problem is it's quite resource intensive in all sites. Like you, as the community initiator, you will be expected to be involved at all times to make sure that the community is engaged. And the moment you lose something, it's yeah, community members might fall off. And the other way around, where if a community member wants to start an event, then arbitrating amongst multiple events, I guess, request would also be hard, as since you are the starter of this community and you are expected as the organizer, then people would expect you to come up with the decision on what event should come first, even if other people might have ideas on what it is. So it's hard to expect community members to autonomously start an event and still like keep it within the boundaries, unless they create like their own derivative community separately. So it's quite challenging, but still very effective. Yeah. Now here we have all these types of communities and their effects. So what are some platforms, social platforms that can use to actually facilitate this kind of conversation and interaction? And this is where I've categorized some of the platforms into like various types based on their characteristics. And I could see like three types. Of course, there could be more, but these three are probably the most relevant, which is the unidirection platform, bi-direction platform, and content-driven platforms. So what does a unidirection platform mean? So these are platforms where both parties can chat and submit content or interact with each other simultaneously. What's a good example? Discord, where you have it, it's just a live group chat essentially. And even nowadays, Telegram, WhatsApp, they're also used as a way to gather communities. So those are the unidirection platforms. Great for providing general tech support, or like quick, fast bursts of support. Also great for event-driven communities, since everything is in real time, and events only make sense if people are actually engaged in real time, right? So that's where unidirection platforms can come to play, and it gives you also a high degree of control as well, and a lot of automated control. However, It also could encourage a low engagement because the moment you don't look at the chat for like a week, imagine how many. I mean, I'm like some of you guys had the experience where you're part of like this really big Telegram group and you didn't look at it for like a week, and now there's like 1,000, 2,000 messages, like unread messages out there. I'm not gonna go through that. I have a job. I have things to do. So yeah, it's like that. Like people get kind of sick of it, and it's just hard to catch up, and you might actually miss some important messages in between. And this is why it's also not really fitted for like dedicated. Wait. Sorry. Actually, I messed up. The slide was misordered here, but sorry, it's actually bi-direction, not unidirection. Bi-direction is the one that I was talking about, and you do have high control in terms of automation, but you do need a lot of moderation resources. But yeah, Discord, Telegram, WhatsApp, those are bi-direction communication platforms. That was my mistake. I'm very sorry. So yeah, I guess I'll just start from bi-direction then. So yeah, those are sort of the thing. Like you go to a Telegram channel, didn't look for a week, now like thousands of messages. And also, if you try to operate a supportive, support-driven community on a bi-directional channel or platform, then it would also suffer heavily from SEO or lack of SEO because people can't search the question that that some other people might have asked on Telegram, but of course that chat history is not going to show up in Google, right? So information lost right there, and which also means that it's hard for external people to come in. So therefore, it's high volume interaction, really great for event-driven communities and other types of other forms of communities, but intensive in terms of moderation resource. Now we're going to the unidirectional one. Now that's the one where I should have started from, but I made a mistake there. So unidirection is when you have, it's more like you are the poster. You as the creator or the initiator, you can post it, and people can maybe react on it, share on it, but they can't really, interact and get an immediate response per se. And what's a good example of a unidirection platform? Landing page. Your landing page is you have full control over what the content is. You can share whatever important announcements, information you have, but people can't really interact on it. You can add a comment system, of course, and you can respond to that, but even then, it's a very slow paced, low volume interaction. And this means that, yeah, it could lead into low engagement because people just look at it and that's it. They got the information. There isn't any motivation to share. Another example of a unidirection platform would be YouTube. And here I'm referring to your channel, your YouTube channel. So where you upload a video, you can add people can add comments, but ultimately they're here for the video and you're here to just throw the video out to the world and maybe see some, maybe observe some metrics. But ultimately, it's not meant to have this like multi-sided interaction from the community. Okay, now that's it. Last platform, content-driven ones. So content-driven platforms are platforms where you have a post and you have a content and a post that anyone can submit and people can react and interact with it. Good examples are Reddits. So if you create like your own subreddit, company subreddit, and if you allow anyone to create a post, that's when it becomes a content-driven platform. I know Discord also introduced like forums, but here another example would be Discord forums, but also Discourse, the forum framework that a lot of blockchain projects use for their forums. That is also a content-driven one because you open someone opens a post and then that becomes a thread where everyone comments and interacts with each other. But still, it is always revolving around a content that someone in the community created. It never really bleeds out, and that's the whole point, right? You want to keep things organized. While in a bi-directional channel, it could actually like go to any direction, so you don't really have control over where the conversation goes. And content-driven ones are really great for tech support because great SEO. Like anyone can upload their own content, which then can also be, searched by the bot, which then people can, search on Google to get that information and say like, oh yeah, this is where the source came from. I want to know more. Therefore, I am part of the, part of the community. Good example is also Unity forums. If you see how developers interact with each other, or Stack Exchange, those are all like content-driven and support-driven communities on a content-driven platform. Sorry, events sometimes could be useful, but I would say if you're focusing on an event-driven community, then maybe a unidirection. A unidirection platform might make more sense because you want everyone to have the same information. You want everyone to be caught up to date without noise. In that case, like a announcement tweet or your own website landing page announcements or YouTube videos, like that works perfectly. And bi-direction is great for event coordination. So everything, once the event has been like announced, that's when you want to have another platform to actually discuss about and have people engaged in there in real time. So, and you can see here, like it's these are not mutually exclusive, nor you have to stick with one. Like it's totally okay and encouraged to mix, but also like use multiple forms of communities. But what I want to highlight in this slide is that make sure you understand the identity of your community. Community evolves over time, and I will also go through a couple of cases where it did evolve. But you can always start from a support-driven community that has that's in a that's purely operated in a discourse forum page. And then you can have small coordinations on Discord. But then once you see other demand or other characteristics of your community, you want to make sure that you expand that and make sure you accommodate your platforms and your community or the types of interactions your community engage in, so that it does not alienate the next trend that's happening within your community. So now let's see. Okay, so now let's, oh, that's perfect. Yeah, thank you for raising your hand, because now we are in the mid Q&A. So that's, okay, Decker, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you. So I feel there's a template that most of us are following, where kind of unidirectional is, as I understood it, would be Twitter. Most of us has bidirectional, so we don't have a Telegram, but we are very much on Discord. We don't have a content platform, but like all parachains, for example, have forums and stuff like that. But we always come to the problem how to kind of channel the users through these platforms, because most of the users are in all of them. So it's a mixture for all of us, and we all have to deal with it. And we resorted to like repost. Everything leads to Twitter. Everything leads back to your to this. So if we post something, we try not to stay too much in Discord, but get our people onto Twitter to get the engagement. But like, do you have experience or a formula how you would like through these different types route the users?
Right. So if I guess to paraphrase your question, and please correct me if I'm wrong. So you're asking like, how do you deal with the platform fragmentation and like, I guess let's say extreme decentralization within your community? Is that correct?
Yeah, I feel it's not just a question like we face. It's like many projects in Polkadot or even games on Polkadot and so on. It's not an XOR. It's always an AND. No one can just go with a Twitter, or the least can go. Like everyone has to have a Twitter, and then depending on their type of business, they have to have other types. So everyone is dealing with that issues of community fragmentation. Or maybe not just community fragmentation, but community all across these platforms, and having to engage them at the right spots.
Yeah. So yeah, that's and that would also be an organizational nightmare too. And yes, I've seen that like happen so many times everywhere. And also, of course, like I've saw that like personally as well. And that's the thing. Like I guess that's where I don't really have a clear solution for that I can share right away, because one, it will highly depend on the nature of your community and all the visions that I have outlined here. So depending on what kind of characteristics your communities are showing, or what kind of content they are mainly exchanging, everything would change for sure. Now I can give one example, and this one is a personal example, where there's this subreddit called I need a game dev, or sorry, I need a developer or something. So it's a subreddit where if you are making a small game project or any project and you need to find a developer, an artist, you can just post that, and people can engage and make a team. In fact, that's how actually Team Step started a couple of years ago, which is interesting. And for that subreddit, I'm only exclusively engaged on the Reddit side, but that subreddit also had a Discord server where they actually do talk about like more in-depth stuff that to elaborate more on the post. And I believe in Polkadot as well, and I guess most parachains, the workflow of like interacting with the governance is you first open the forum post to get the initial engagement, and then you also have to explain yourself on Discord, and then you also have to like open on-chain proposal. It's a nightmare. There's so many pipeline you have to do, or a single user has to go through to perform one interaction. And my recommendation for this is once you see that it requires more than one platform for a single user to actually finish a single interaction, you have a problem. Your interaction should be encapsulated for a specific platform for that specific purpose. For example, the reason why I brought the Reddit as example is because I never knew about the Discord. Like I was always only on Reddit, and I never had any problem talking or getting people. So that was effective. But Discord added its own benefits. Joining the server added its own benefits. That made sense. But the core benefit of that community did not. It didn't lose any value just because I didn't join the Discord server. So you have to ask the question, like if I remove one of the steps, like if I remove my Twitter account, or the company Twitter account, I guess, what would happen? Will people be lost? Is this even necessary to share that tweet? Like what would happen if I don't engage and see like what are the missing pieces? And is there a way to replace that and make that happen within one platform? And if nothing, if there's no way to like manually isolate that, I wouldn't say isolate isn't really a good word, but to centralize all those features per platform, per purpose, if that cannot be done, then automation, technology, baby. You have to program everything and probably just, make sure that the flow is automated. So in the user perspective, they just perform one interaction, which is either to open a proposal or whatever, and that just goes smoothly through all the process. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it did somehow, but on the other hand, I think you're mainly talking about UX, right? Because there are different, I think there are different goals of a community, and one is also to engage around the specific sub topic. In our case, is games, like to engage about the game, to talk about the latest update, and then the other one is to get and acquire new players, where we also require our players to talk in an organic way good about our project. So it's kind of about outreach as well. So the community serves not just the purpose of aligning around that initial goal, where in our case, people said, oh, cool, that's a classic game, I like that. And they can do it in Discord. And I totally agree with you that if we would cancel out the Twitter tomorrow, they would still be able to do this. But another big part of community is that we want to have a meaningful engagement between the players that feels not just pushed by us, right? And that's also what the community serves. So I feel these are different use cases of community.
Yeah, in that case, I think you're talking about like how to encourage communities to organically share the interaction that they're performing within the community. And I would say that's actually a different topic, which I actually do kind of touch on later in the session. So yeah, I guess I can probably
okay. Then
if the later
session, I just wait for that.
Yeah, if the later session does not answer your question, then I can I can try to re-answer it. So is there any other questions from anyone else? A short one, preferably. Okay, Skumit. Sorry, I don't know if I pronounced your name correctly.
That's perfect.
Okay.
So I had one question. Is one of the ethos of the Web3 and blockchains are anonymity, and the other one is basically trustless, decentralized like ecosystems. So how do you see anonymity and trustless affecting the community when we are talking about games? Like, do they intersect, or it is saying we have to give up anonymity and we have to be trustful in the community? Because maybe the question is something of a different question, but you understand trying
Yeah,
to
I
say?
understood. I understood your question. Yes, and thank you. So, and that's actually also something that I do cover later in the later section. So I'll definitely answer there. But to just give a short answer to that, it's always community first, always player first, always user first. So if anonymity and also pseudo anonymity to be more specific, but anonymity and list or permissionless, if that doesn't add any value to your game or your community, then just ignore it. Like, don't try to force yourself to be decentralized or transparent if that doesn't add any value to what you're trying to do.
Thank you.
And that's actually also the reason why I wanted to slightly adjust this topic as well, so that we kind of break out of the boundaries of blockchain and Web3. So yeah, now moving on to the next chapter, lessons from the past and popular cases. So in this chapter, I'll go to actual examples of good popular cases and my personal experience while starting the Astar community and also the Sheetan community. So Skyrim and Unity is the example that I chose here. And also the order is mixed for some reason, but I'll cover Unity first here. So yeah, and why I chose these as the best example, because I think you can sort of imagine these two are like defined by their communities. And of course there are other games, but probably these are like the best in terms of business cases, because Unity, there's a lot to learn from them. Now let's start with Unity. So it actually started, Unity, the engine started from 2005, and it was a Mac exclusive game engine, like for the Mac PC. And I know it might be hard to believe nowadays, but back in the good old days, Mac was actually de facto PC gaming machine and the operating system. But then one guy was like, "Hey, we should focus more on gaming," and Steve Jobs was like, "Nah, gaming is a waste of time." And then the guy got mad, and then he started EA. No joke, that's actually what happened. And so that's why early on, Unity as an engine, it's more for the technical audience, right? So of course, their characteristics as a community is strongly on the support-driven, and content-driven platform and community. So it was really in the form of developer and tech support. Initially, the developers and Unity core developers would be part of these technical discussions, questions, and then answer anyone's question. And they still do, actually. That's also one of the reasons why Unity is like so great, is because you get all the like really accurate answers. And Unity as a company do offer these B2B services as well, like as a consultant for developers, but their defining factor is really on its community. And that's also what made them different from Unreal too, because Unreal is focused on corporate high quality, and this I'm talking about like before, pre-Fortnite, pre-game store. Now, like, they really focus on trying to push the community side. But back then, Unity was one of the first movers in terms of like crowdsourcing tech support, and that worked like magic. So a lot of people jumped in. And it was easy to get in. You don't need to pay up a company to use that engine, and it kind of set up a standard for future game engines. Now, what happened in this tech support process was that the community would actually like share various codes or plugins, let's say, that would make things much easier for developers. And these are all just like things that boilerplates that you want to do, templates or just assets. Share them with the community on these technical posts, like, and then that's when Unity saw an opportunity. What if we give them a platform, a marketplace, where you can actually distribute all these plugins or assets and let them interact with each other in another way. So if you recall my couple of slides ago regarding the types of communities. Now Unity, they started from a purely like tech support, nothing like too much. Now they expanded into a content driven community or user generated content driven community, where it's like, hey, we're going to now crowdsource content for our game and let it evolve on its own, let the community do its thing. And the brilliant thing about Unity's asset store, in my opinion, is that they saw something that was happening. They saw that, yeah, it's people are sharing a lot of their own content with each other. However, there wasn't a central platform to do this. There was no convenient way to do it other than to actually like search and hope that you actually get the right asset or someone uploads it somewhere. So that's why Unity solved that problem by introducing the asset store. And other thing is like they have a huge offline and online event presence. They have a lot of grant programs. They have a lot of game. Well, I don't say a lot, but they do have game jams and events to encourage people to not only build but really like interact with others. And that's what also kind of differentiates Unity's approach in terms of grants versus other, let's say, typical blockchain grants. Because the way, in my opinion, blockchain grants are really give them the initial monetary support and incentive to encourage them to build on their platform to lower the barrier of entry. Well, I wouldn't really lower it, but it would increase the incentive so that the barrier of entry wouldn't really matter too much for the initial users. However, what happens afterwards? And Polkadot was quite successful with its Web3 grants because people later on actually became parachutes and interacted with each other, becoming a platform, or sorry, a community. But a lot of blockchains, a lot of blockchain protocols tend to fail in like leveraging this initial.
Eine Zwischenwallet senden zu lassen, das
Sorry?
dann zu burnen und oh, sorry.
No worries. Yeah. So that's so events and grants. That's another way how Unity sort of engaged its community. Now we saw the third type, which is the event-driven community, and they also always publish content on their own, so that the community can always interact. And this, I think, could address Deckard's question as well regarding outreach from the community. So what Unity does is they always regularly post these case studies and blogs on their website, basically. And of course, no one else can really, outside of commenting, they can't really do anything. But these contents are meant to represent the community, highlight some community moments, but also the industry moments, and give insights to other people, which then would be interested in learning more. So even if they're not interested in Unity, they'll still be interested in the content. And that's the degree of engagement you want. When people are engaged, even if they're not interested in the topic, or they're not interested in the community, but they're still interested in the topic. And I believe this is because they had a very clear vision of how to not only start but evolve their community continuously. And this became the industry standard. Now, on the other hand, Skyrim is an interesting guy because this one probably had the other way around, where things kind of went bad. So first thing, Skyrim probably started as like general game support. Bethesda games, they got bugs like every 5 minutes. So the support, so the forums probably were full of questions. And so not hard to engage the community, right? You always have content. But the Elder Scrolls series is much longer than Skyrim. Skyrim is the first one not the first one, it's Oblivion, the first one, but Skyrim's the first one or the biggest one to be like really going mainstream. So it just perpetuated everything that they already had. But the Elder Scrolls series, starting from Arena, was like really, really older than me, actually. And that's where the initial core audience or core community happened, the lore discussion. Even if you look at the current like lore forums, people like writers from Bethesda are engaged in it. People want to like share their own theories and talk about it. That's the type of community. That's how they got the initial engagement, and it was very successful too. Now, they were highly focused on organic growth. They didn't really, from what I see, like Bethesda's efforts on like sort of, let's say, gathering or growing their community was quite early, was quite recent. So most of the current growth you can see it as organic. However, the problem came in when the modding community became so big. It was great for Skyrim, of course. A lot of people are playing it. I'm still playing it. I'm still addicted to it. But now the problem is Bethesda was way too late when it comes to like centralizing the mods. Unity, in their case, when they saw the need of people sharing their own custom content, they offered a platform right away, offered a way to help each other out and reach out to people. But in case of Skyrim, or Bethesda specifically, the modding scene happened from all the way back in Morrowind. But they still didn't really offer. They did offer an engine and SDK to mods to make it easy to mod, but they didn't really offer a platform to share it. And this came in, and of course, Nexus and other businesses came in to sort of like capitalize on that. So we already have a platform. We already have a centralized like reference point for all people to gather and interact with. So Bethesda is now missing out on all this potential revenue, right? So they're feeling like they're shaking in their boots. So they're like, hey, let's introduce things. What if we pay the modders? What if we let the people buy the mods and we pay the modders commission, and we'll take a sip from that. And that's where they introduced the Creation Club. problem is, they didn't really make anything easier because they wanted to alienate all the other mods that were out there, and that would alienate so many people that it actually became a backlash. So there are people still using creative the creation club, but if you look at online, the sentiment isn't really positive. So another tip of community engagement: understand your, or lessons learned from here, understand your community needs, understand how they engage with each other, always observe, and always find where you can improve on that engagement experience. Don't try to force them to use a specific engagement. They'll never work when you try to force something. And that's where they fail to centralize. And I guess this, the word centralization is kind of a bad word in this specific situation, but in this call, but here you want to centralize the point of contact. Now let's move on to the my personal experience when it comes to growing Astar. So when we first started Astar, and at the time it was called Plasm Network, since we had a rebranding, and when we first started Plasm Network, it was really just a Telegram group and a bunch of posts from the Web3 Foundation that we would share regarding the grants, and we would engage with the community through that posts, essentially saying that, hey, we created this new feature, new grants, which will be part of Plasm, and if you have any technical questions or how you can use this for your potential future project, let us know. And was sort of the gist of it. Of course, being blockchain, there was a lot of crypto price and those noise as well. And our channel of choice at first was a Telegram. So it's the Telegram channel. Just getting people there and sharing whatever they can, and us answering questions. That was sort of the main interaction flow and the topic. So problem was that, of course, the community scale, it was quite hard to maintain. So moved to Discord. We also added a bunch of other forums and platforms. Now, one lesson that I kind of had to learn the hard way was that because we didn't really plan out on releasing everything in by sequence, by need basis, but instead we planned it because it's a trend. Everyone else has it, so why shouldn't we not have it? And that's also what our audience expected to have. So we were forced to do it. But because we introduced a platform that no one really used, the starting point was quite rocky. Initially, I mean, Discord, I guess it's just an evolution of Telegram, and we discontinued Telegram, the Astar Telegram channel. Though we do kind of have it, but the main conversation is always on Discord, because we didn't want to split our resource. Now, the forums, on the other hand, were the problem, because as a blockchain, you have a lot of technical questions, especially if it's Astar specific. So now the forums, because we didn't do a good job at introducing the forums for a very, let's say, a more practical use case with various audiences, a lot of people would just start from Discord. And even if you were engaged in the forums, you would always end up in Discord. And that's where all the conversation would happen, even the technical discussions and everything. So we're using a bi-directional platform for even things that wouldn't really be optimal for bi-directional platforms. And we were kind of forced to do it because we released it first instead of thinking and planning out. So to sort of go back on Deckard's question about the having bunch of platforms, but also the flow and how to expose some, make the content exposed and attract other people out of the community. This is one problem could happen if you try to centralize it too much, because Discord is probably the most hard to expose platform. You're not going to get all the Discord chat history on Google, and probably for a good reason. So it's so at that point, people who come to Discord end up in Discord, and they just stay in Discord. So, and rarely the news goes out. So that was some of the issues that we learned. Now, based on this experience, there's another experiment that some of the Degen members in Astar and myself started, which is called the Shiden DAO. Pretty sure you might have heard of it at some point. Now, the motivation was to empower those hackers within, and I say hackers in a geeky, homebrew hacker way, hackers in Astar who wanted to build something, just want to build, and they don't really care too much, because we wanted to prioritize the builders, and that was the community vision we had. But because it's a blockchain, of course, everyone talks about various stuff in a single channel. That gets really hectic. So we want to split that and have Shiden be the testing bed for a lot of the projects. And for context, Shiden is the Kusama parachain of Astar Network. So it's practically Astar Network, just with the faster update cycle. And that's how we started. We had this like really amazing, we had the manifesto. We had a lot of like the live streams and events. Tried to get people engaged in it. So at first it worked fairly well. We actually saw a lot of people wanting to build these like unique projects and open up XCM channels with like random parachains that you couldn't really do on Astar permissionlessly. So it sort of paid out. However, problem was that we could not, we as in the Astar Foundation core members could not fully engage with the community because we already had Astar, and it's not like the foundation is going to give us a budget for Shiden. So naturally, everything was prioritizing Astar, and as Astar grew, this was doubly so. So Shiden kind of, the community voice kind of decreased because the lack of engagement from the start, the initiators. And this is the lesson. Like even if you start a community with a vision, with the plan, with its own channel and function, if you cannot stay engaged with it, it's not going to really work out. It won't work out until you have someone can dedicate yourself to it. And that could be from the team or from the community. But once you find someone can dedicate to it, you really want to support that person and empower that person to do that. So now those are some of the experiences and the case studies that I could find. Now we'll look into the practical, these tactics of engaging a community. And of course, I'll also touch on the Web3 aspect of this as well, in terms of like how Web3 actually translates and what tools you can use from the web that's available only in Web3. So yeah, first thing for game studios especially would be the obvious ones. I'm pretty sure you guys already know most of these, but I'll just reiterate them to illustrate them in the context of the platforms and community type described. So playtesting sessions. These would be event-driven communities or community characteristics. If your game isn't released yet, or if you're anticipating a big update, what you want to do is you want to showcase that. You want to showcase the progress. You want to get people engaged and talk about and build hype on what you're trying to do in the future. And playtesting sessions are one of the most effective ways of doing this. And it's also great because people see that that the team is actually working and doing their thing, but they also feel like they're part of the process of building this. So it gives a lot of engagement. However, one thing you can guess is that it's intensive in terms of coordinating, depending on what type of game you're making. If it's an online game, probably you might want to have like the infrastructure, but also the time to get all those people together. If it's an offline game, then it would really be mostly on the distribution and security side. If you're sensitive on like not leaking beta builds online, but if you don't care, then in that case, it's really just you can do it with the press of a button probably. So yeah, very very good tactic. Another tactic is the in-game events, and for this one, mostly for multiplayer games, especially for online games, I guess, where you can have like just in-game meetups with your community members, have regular events, but this could also be for live service games that are not online, where you have these like periodic events, daily events, weekly quests, whatever, to get people engaged with your game. And another type of events would be the out-of-game events. So, and this is how I define, in-game and out-game events are different. Where in-game, out-game events would be offline or something that happens outside of the game. Let's say you have a meme contest saying that, hey, if you share the funniest meme about our game, will win, whatever prize. That could be an example of an out-of-game event. So you want to create these events to engage more people. Another strategy or tactic a studio can take is through crowdfunding. And this could be both traditional method or even, with the tried and tested blockchain method as well, with crypto token releases or NFTs. Those are also a form of crowdfunding, really. And the reason why crowdfunding is so effective in community engagement is because you give a stake to your community. They actually have at least the perception, have a stake in what you're building, and they are so interested enough to actually to keep that stake, and they feel like they are entitled to know more, and this now loops back into engagement because they feel entitled. They feel like they want to engage, and then because they engage, more content, more interaction, and yeah, of course, crowdfunding, people think it's a funding mechanism, which that's how it started. It kind of is, but honestly, like, nothing is as good as funding from VCs. So crowdfunding is mostly nowadays used as a community engagement tactic. Another tactic is the in-game content distribution, and this one is referring to regular feature updates or add-ons, and this is where the feature treadmill comes in. So if you have a pretty solid team, live service games with constant updates and new levels, that's basically this in-game content distribution. This is also another way you can gain community engagement, so that people always talk about something. But yeah, in short, to summarize this slide, just give people to talk about something and give them a reason to talk about it or be engaged in it. And with Web3, there are a lot of tools they can use. Of course, there are also a lot of myths because, yeah, a lot of people talk about how Web3 or blockchain specifically can change the course of marketing. I'm pretty sure when you talk about NFTs and community engagement or marketing, everyone always mentions like, now traditional marketing, you have to pay Facebook, but you don't even know like what kind of people came to you. Now you can pay the people who can directly play, who would directly most likely play your game, pay them directly and encourage them to play and then share the word. Now, problem with that is that only works if you assume that the entire population's digital footprint is on chain, which is already, if we already have that, then we wouldn't really probably have this conversation, I think. And I don't know if that would be a dystopian or utopian, but it's that is the fundamental assumption that you kind of have to make. And if you rely on existing communities or wallets, let's say, on a specific chain, then your audience is bounded by that chain. And the protocol perspective, you're the marketing guy who gets all the people in that chain. So you are the community member in that protocol's perspective. So this is where the challenge comes in when it comes to using Web3. You want to use it in a smart way. Don't just blindly follow what's already out there. Don't just see what on-chain activity or liquidity happens. Just because someone interacted with this NFT doesn't mean they're gonna interact with yours. You can definitely track know which address, and you can definitely airdrop some certain things, but it wouldn't be as easy as that because we're all humans, right? So where are the actual benefits? So for example, in case of ownership, these are very limited when it comes to what people can actually own and what does ownership imply. Because another argument we see is like if gaming, if assets, in-game assets are on chain, then you can use that, carry that on to other projects. That only makes sense if other studios are willing to and has business motivations to implement that. Which, after a certain amount of interaction on chain, definitely that would be feasible. But as it is right now, not feasible at all and very unrealistic. So instead, what you want to do is use blockchain as your own ecosystem. What does ownership mean? You tell the players. You define what ownership means. Don't say like just because you own it means that no one else can take that NFT away from you, because that's not really true. If you break the game, you effectively took that NFT away from you, because in the perspective of the player, your game is their world. Your game is their world, so that you have to now tell them what does it mean. And if you create another game that uses the same in-game assets, on-chain data, then yeah, you can tell then there you go. You define the player that ownership means you can always 100% use the thing that you have in this game within the boundaries of our game or other games that we're creating. Yes, Jake.
I know. Sorry, we just touched on it earlier, myself and Hoon, about the narrative. This is kind of the main narrative around Web3 gaming at the moment that you find at GDC as well. Why do you think this is the main narrative, and why do you think more people aren't addressing, I guess, the issue that you just brought up?
Right. So, I mean, I guess I could give a good guess on that. So, my opinion, reason why is it's the easiest, but it's also straightforward way to sell something without actually delivering on it, because you can it's easy to provide on-chain ownership and assets, but to actually implement that and utilize that is a whole different topic. But just by saying that, hey, you could potentially, as long as someone else implements that, you have ownership, and people sort of neglect and just swap away those details of implementing and just think about the ownership side. So that's one thing I would say. And the other reason is it kind of gives the impression that you're empowering the players, and because players do acknowledge that online, especially live services, are unreliable. Because the moment they have a bad update, I mean, literally Ethereum was invented because Blizzard messed up with World of Warcraft. So you can see like why people are interested in that narrative, but it's just an empty narrative, and it's something that to stick, I would say. And yeah, and also just to going back to GDC as well, like people did acknowledge that it's a potential benefit that is not realistically available right away. That's what a lot of the people who are actively building on blockchains and building blockchains or building on blockchains always repeat. And going to other narratives that you commonly see, play to earn. For example, what if I can play, make money off of doing the things that I like? Well, a couple of problems with this. Like, it sounds good on paper, but actually, even on paper, it's really highly dependent, I would say, depending on how exactly what it means to earn. And people, see it's really the before I go, just Lucas.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I just had a quick thought about that as well. I was interested in your opinion on it as well. We have been talking to some game studios in our area as well, and bringing up an argument like ownership, on-chain ownership is almost like they don't really care about it. For them, it's not a reason to use blockchain at all. I mean, they definitely get the sense of, okay, you are the owner of it, you have your wallet, it's in your wallet, but like the bigger argument of okay, now I have it in my wallet, but what if the game suddenly stops implementing anything at all? Then I just have something in my wallet. It's just as well, it could just as well be in Steam in some database where I can't do anything with it either. So I feel like this is almost like an argument that gets less and less attractive. I feel like it was the narrative like a year or two ago where you were like, oh, you will own everything. But I feel nowadays it's like, this is almost like a given. Hey, you need to have your stuff on chain, but then, okay, but what's blockchain actually delivering for you other than just ownership? But I'm not sure how you feel about that.
No, actually, so yeah, I think that's a good point. And in terms of ownership, I guess, yeah, I'll repeat my previous point. Like, people have to define what ownership means. If I buy in a game on Steam, me as a user, I own that. Even though obviously if Steam server goes down, if my internet goes down, DRM, the nature of DRM, I don't actually own it. But the fact that I can do it whenever I want is what people think ownership, or that's how we're conditioned to learn what ownership means. And yeah, to going back on that narrative as well, a lot of studios fail to present what ownership implies within their specific case, and that's why it's a narrative that works well in the perspective. And if I were to make a blockchain and my business model is to let people use my blockchain as much as possible, then that's probably the metric, the narrative I would go with. And now developers who are working on blockchains are just regurgitating the same narrative because that's all they heard about and that's what they were attracted for. And they kind of forget that, yeah, we actually have to do the work now.
But do you also see like the chance in, I guess, developers realizing, hey, this was the narrative from a year or two ago, we need to like do more? Do you see like a value in that, or do you think something like ownership still has its righteous place to be and still is enough for blockchain?
You mean like, so like, does ownership actually has any merits, right?
Yeah.
So I would say yes, actually. I would say it definitely has merits for two main reasons. So one is ownership, in other words, means auditability. So blockchain introduces auditability for games. And if you, for example, create a platform where you have currencies that, okay, let's say Roblox as an example, where you actually create, you can allow anyone to create their own games in their own marketplace and platform, and you can use the virtual currency to purchase stuff and even cash out, you as a creator. Then you as a Roblox, the business, put yourself in the banking industry, because now people can technically deposit for a fake digital currency, and then people can withdraw, right? So auditability is absolutely important, and auditability only happens when you can prove that the ownership transfer or transactions actually occurred. So in that sense, ownership is, I would say, quite crucial. I mean, it's not necessary because, of course, like you can have a centralized database to do everything. But if you want to expand while not incurring too much cost on your side, then ownership is probably the best way to do it. And yeah, that's where I definitely see some merit in it. Another part is not really ownership, but what's the other word for owner, or what goes hand in hand with ownership? Identity. So auditability and identity. Those are the two things I think really would really work well, and that are providing merit in ownership, because your identity is needed within your game. It's clear, but the moment you want to expand that from within your game to other games or other platforms or whatever, then in traditional methods you have to create that all over again every time, different server, whatever. But now with blockchains you have a centralized reference server, so that's where ownership is also quite important. So yeah, there are definitely benefits, but as I said, like, you as a studio should be responsible for defining what it means to your players. So using that as a broad narrative is only allowed if you are a blockchain, if you're a company that builds blockchain and you have to bring more clients, developers to your blockchain. If you are the developer, I don't mention the word ownership. So now, yeah, play to earn. To keep it short, it's more like a way to attract non-gamers to pretend like they're gamers and say like, hey, cool, hey kids, I'm cool, right? Because in reality, value must come from somewhere. And another thing with play to earn, I'm not just talking about play to earn, or play and earn here specifically. And the reason why I wrote it like this is because it's not just play to earn, but also marketplaces, where you say like, hey, we have in-game NFTs, and imagine if you have a marketplace or auction houses where you can trade that game for real life money later on after you're finished playing. Now, the problem comes when the moment you introduce any economic or, let's say, extrinsic value to your game, people will 100% exploit that. So now, you as a studio who just wants to create games for fun, now and sustain yourselves from that, now you have to invest in cybersecurity and even like some really like some government level security, just to make sure that no one exploits the system. I mean, if you know like how much how much it costs to get an auditor, a smart contract auditor for your protocol, it's ridiculous. And of course we kind of take high costs as a given, because in this crypto space we assume that we're going to get a lot of investment, because the figures are in the millions. But I think we should move away from that mentality. We should work on something that could even work with. Did I lose my internet?
For a little bit, but it's
Okay.
fine. It was
okay, good. Yeah,
wasn't
just-
really.
I think you cannot lose your internet.
okay.
It's
okay,
all
but
our internet,
okay.
not just yours.
Yeah, everyone stopped, right? Oof. But you guys can hear me without any problem, right? I can hear you guys.
Perfectly.
Okay, then yeah, I'll continue. So yeah, play to earn, so marketplaces and trading. Like the moment you introduce extrinsic motivations, you're going to get external bad actors. They're just asking to be exploited, basically. And I don't think that's sustainable unless you really have a good model or a gameplay that justifies that. And there definitely is. Like, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of games or works that could really bridge the gap between reality and real life exchange of value while still making it fun. But that would be in the realm of gamifying rather than actually gaming. So yeah, that's one thing. Now, better targeting, which is referring to on-chain identity and being able to audit and creating a knowledge graph of user identity. This only works if all the identity is on-chain for all users that you want to target. However, one benefit that you have as a studio is that people who already played your game, you have their information. And by information, I mean activity. You don't have their personal information, but you still have their activity. And as a studio, that's all you need to identify what would be their interests. And that is where you could leverage that benefit. But keep in mind that it will be limited within your scope. Now, another thing is the governance-led growth, which is, i.e., introducing decentralized governance to your game. Imagine, a game that's owned by the community. Imagine a world where you can create the DLCs where where the community actually developed and pushed, and then it's accepted based on community votes. And imagine we use like voting rights based on tokens or governance token. Now, that would be another problem, which is that it set a wrong incentive for why projects would be rewarded. And by that, I mean that people should play, people want to see your world. Your game is your world and your vision. It should be your baby. And that's why people want to play that. They like you. They want to see more of that. They don't want to just play this one game and just don't play anything else. I know a lot of people kind of think like this is the last. People try to make the last game that anyone will ever play and make the ultimate game, but I don't think that's going to be sustainable. Because yeah, crowdsourcing ideas are great. There's no problem with that, and it's really powerful too. Great community engagement tactic. However, don't make that as the core gameplay. You should be the core. You should be fun. That's why people want to play and be part of your community. And then you just give them the option to empower them. So empowering versus having governance is a fully decentralized community-driven governance. I would say they're very different. So yeah, those are yes.
On that, why would surely game studios also wouldn't overly want governance on their game, because it just creates unnecessary costs. And also, if you really do think about it, someone can completely troll the game or create these weird twists, and then the game studio completely, it's just unrealistic. But what about adopting the approach of governance, but more in like a scaled approach? So it's already built in, but there could be certain governance mechanisms that can be twisted in, let's say, for instance, if you've got a gun and you can say the gun's too powerful, governance can be built in voting where it can actually decrease the power of the certain gun, but it's built in already by the game studio instead of. Would that be a pretty good governance mechanism? And I think especially with Polkadot and the strength of governance in Polkadot, maybe it's of interest to the audience or not. I don't know. It's a
Sure,
weird.
that's a very good point. Absolutely. However, I don't see why that would need Web3. It's just a survey, no? Like you're just asking your clients, like, or players, and look, based on testing results, you see like, yeah, this item is definitely overpowered and people balance. That's why studios have a dedicated balancing team. Now, if it's like crowdsourced and the studio objectively thinks that this is good, but the crowd doesn't think that's good, then probably voice it on the channels that you have created. And that's where community interaction is important, because you get active feedback, and you don't really need blockchain to do that. We all want to voice our opinion, and a good type of community is when people can actively voice their opinion on something. Now, when it comes to specifically Web3 governance, that would be when you can allocate a budget without having the studio being involved in a specific operation. So treasury allocation. And in that case, I would say it wouldn't really make a lot of sense for games. However, where does governance, Web3 specifically, governance make sense for a game studio? That would be out game events or out game activities. So anything that doesn't cover your game but covers your community, that's where on-chain governance actually could make sense. Imagine you have a very small, tiny community treasure, but and the game itself is not really connected to that per se. Of course, maybe the identity could be, that's fine. But the idea is like, hey, we want to have like a community meetup of people just liking the same game. Where should the budget come from? Treasury or something like that. Of course, I'm giving like a very lowball example here, but there are merits to having on-chain governance for your game studio and community. It's just that know how to use them and don't try to make everything inclusive of it, because that's when you come into trouble. Yes.
Hello. So
Yep.
One more question in the ownership. So
Yes.
let's say we are talking about Web3 gaming, and we remove the part of NFT. Most of the game studios and gamers have this thing, like with two different reasons, have this in mind, like what should of the game should go on blockchain, like which functionality other than NFT. I totally am in line with you that NFT has to be on NFT, like on blockchain, but that other than that, what part of game should transition and what should not transition. So it's a hard decision for everybody. In regard to that, the follow-up is we have 9 games here. What everybody is trying to make a Web3 game. So what, maybe we are on target, maybe we are not on target. How do we determine that whatever we put on the game is the right thing?
Right. And that's where, that's actually exactly, oh, sorry. Do you have
No, sorry, I misspoke. I was saying what we put on the blockchain is the right thing.
Right. Yes. And I think that's where like the cage that Web3 has put on everyone, in my opinion, because when you say Web3 game, well, first of all, like if your game is actually fully Web3 that catered towards specifically and if like, specific users of a specific community, then fair game. Like you can have NFTs on chain and just have game use that and people connect with the wallet and hey, my NFT shows up, cool. That's totally possible. However, in terms of like what should be on chain, the short answer is what really matters that has to be on chain. Economy, in-game economy, anything that requires auditability, anything that requires verification without you as a studio having too much security burden. So see blockchain as more of a side tool that complements your overall infrastructure. Do not see it as the main thing that you have to put everything on there. So I wouldn't really call it a Web3 game because you don't call WoW a Web2 game. Just call it a game, right? And this is sort of narrative that everyone says in Web3 is that we don't call it Web3 game, just call it a game. Or that's the narrative where people want to kind of go. But in terms of like what should be on chain as well, whatever that reduces the cost of your business by having it on chain, put it on chain. Whatever makes sense, whatever the user expects is on chain or should be on chain. That you should put on chain. But if your players or target audience does not care where it is, then you shouldn't either. Like you should provide whatever that wants people to use benefit the most out of it. And yeah, here Web3 is really for the community that's outside of the game rather than components that are inside the game. Yes, Marcin.
Sorry. Somebody is not muting his microphone, and I'm listening the whole time to German transmission. However, I just want to say you are 100% right. We, for example, at 8-Bit Arcade are exactly experiencing this, that gamers are not giving really, to be honest, any kind of interest or what kind of back-end service or what kind of blockchain technology the game is running. And that's also why we decided just to call it games, not only Web3 games. It's all about gaming, and that's the main reason, I guess, also why a lot of Web3 games in the earlier days or the last 2 years have struggled. So it's a good advice from you. Also, always talk about not only games, but also about digital assets instead of NFTs, for example. Yeah. We talk never about NFTs. It's all digital assets we are using for different games, and it is really so clear that people has a toxic meaning about NFTs. So we decided to call it just digital assets, and I think it's a nice approach. Just as a small advice here.
Thank you for your comment, and yeah, absolutely agree with that. And I think a lot of the industry as a whole is kind of shifting to that narrative. So it's a positive change. And I know we're like really over time. I'm so sorry, Jake, but the audience is really great. So so allow me to just rant just one more thing before I move on to the next section about Web3 and blockchains, because so many people in this industry, not just gaming but everyone, see blockchain as this monolithic singular technology that's all the same. Like, what should we put on the blockchain? Can we put this on the blockchain? And because of this, when we say blockchain, now everyone is associating with EVM compatible chains. But remember, blockchains are a category of technology which has their own features and benefits that might serve some use cases, might not serve some use cases. And you don't just choose one blockchain. You're more than allowed to use multiple ones to deliver on the value that you want to create. For example, like off-chain computation, probably cheaper than cloud computing. So you want to, or cloud function. So you want to use that. Then yeah, go ahead, you can do that. IPFS, obvious benefits. Or yeah, there's also like nowadays there's like decentralized virtual environments and like actual cloud functions and databases, storages, like so many solutions out there. I don't know why we're seeing blockchain as a singular thing. it really drives me nuts, because as a former CTO, like telling me that, hey, should this be on the blockchain is like asking, hey, should I put my application on the cloud? It's like, yeah, like depends really. What kind of use are you trying to look for, and what specifically what function are you looking for that benefits that a cloud provider would be able to provide? So yeah, that's, sorry for the tangent there, but that's one of the things that I noticed, and that's what also adds to the contribution to people who have no idea about this space and they want to use it because they think blockchain is a singular thing. They want to implement it for the game, but they're like, yeah, I don't know where to start, so I'll just start from NFTs and ERC20s. But hey, if I have NFTs and ERC20s, I get a lot of investment, right? So therefore, I'm going to use this. So that's most of the motivations I saw so far in this industry, and I think we should really change that. So that was really the talk about the community engagement side. Now, I want to briefly go on to the explain what Team Step does to you guys, because I've learned a lot about community throughout my career, and I'm not claiming that I'm an expert in this area or someone who's like knowledgeable enough to teach anyone. Instead, I want to see myself as someone who experienced it, still didn't really find a solution, but have a good guess. And I'm just sharing my experience with you guys as a fellow creator and a developer and an entrepreneur. So what is our approach at Team Step? So see, from what I've explained, you can see like building a community, there's a lot to consider. It's quite hard, but there are fundamental issues with how you can create a community. One thing that you noticed throughout this session is that I focused on community engagement, social media platforms, and out game events, while also trying to merge them with in-game events. That is kind of hard nowadays because there isn't really a good method to do that, because in-game and out-game are kind of treated separate in isolation. So social platforms are isolated from games, and there's also lack of a holistic approach in engagement. So, for example, if you were to create a game and you have a community, how would you calculate player retention? Would it be people who are actively playing your game, who recurringly play your game in a periodic way and have a lot of in-game purchases or potential to have in-game purchases, or would you also consider people who are not playing your game, but talking about the lore, the characters, fan theories, or creating their own content about your game and sharing that online? Would you call those people also engaged with your community? The reality is, it's always the former that the companies would think of, because they're the one who actually make practical contributions. People who talk about the game, yes, they could add to the exposure of your content, but ultimately they don't actively purchase. Like, just because let's say, I don't know, PewDiePie is retired, yeah, Jacksepticeye guy, a famous YouTuber, plays your game, but doesn't mean it doesn't mean he's a customer or a player. He's more a marketer, and that's how a lot of studios think. But I disagree. I think those people should also be treated as a community, as long as they're engaged with the content that you're trying to create. And that's where we introduced Treppe, which is the first big step for the gaming community. And those German-speaking folks could know why I named it that way. But yeah, we created a platform called Treppe, and it uses blockchain technology to basically manage player identity and also player safe states. And everything else is basically off-chain, completely on the game. So how do we do this? Treppe is really an ecosystem and a platform. It's comprised of three main, let's say, components. One is the Treppe SDK, which we will create for Unity. I mean, so far it's for prioritizing Unity, but of course for other popular engines as well, and a standalone API for it to integrate with your game. This would allow your game to communicate with the blockchain, but you as a user don't really need to, or the developer doesn't really need to know fully about the blockchain, because the idea is that we only expose specific features for it. And we use multiple blockchains in the backend, which we abstract. And we have the developer dashboard to track the metric of all your interactions that's happening within your game, and the mobile app that's used as the interface for the players to install and log in to verify their identity. So what does Treppe do? In short, we bridge the gap between in-game and out-game events. So through Treppe, developers they can create events that integrates with the game's save data. And what this means is, it can create a event, and you can create let's say, a event or campaign that says like, hey, I want to if you retweet our post, then you'll get an in-game bonus potion. With Trepe, you can do that. Traditionally, you had to do that in a very manual way. If you've backed any game on crowdfunding platforms, like the developers would give you game keys or any other like DLC bonuses manually and for platform-specific ones. But in our case, because we are using blockchain as the central reference point, as the player identity, players can perform missions that are outside of the game, and the developers can connect that with trigger an in-game event based on the performance of the users that happened outside of the game. So it's like bridging out-game events with in-game events. So now you can get players engaged with your community and still be benefited within the game. Yeah, and I love Godot too. Actually, the team was really great when I met them in GDC. And we also offer an in-game purchase marketplace, so you can list your in-game assets that on Trepe directly, and people can buy that with our platform credit, and creators can use that credit to create more missions or cash out just for flat profit or flat revenue. So this is what we're doing, and you can see because we have both in-game purchase and also community engagement metrics embedded, it means that we can natively calculate CPP and ULV. Well, not ULV, but yeah, but the CPP and the ROAS at the same time, and which then increases the ULV, and that is our hypothesis. Yep, and we're also making a game that's natively integrated with Trepe. And this is how it actually first started. We started the game first, and then we had an issue where it was hard to sort of bridge off out of game events with in-game ones, so we created Trepe. You can scan the QR code to see the trailer. Because of time constraints, I will not play the trailer here. But yeah, and it'll be released fairly soon, quote unquote. Let's see. And yes, so now conclusion. Mind the metrics. Remember these metrics. Even if you don't remember anything what I said here about community engagement, once you know these 4 metrics, you know at least where to start from. And vision is very important. Always have a clear identity of how you want to start your community and what kind of interaction you expect or you want to encourage, because that will guide you to what you should do next. Web3, there are a lot of benefits, but make sure to understand what are the limitations. There's nothing ashamed, no shame of using off-chain or being centralized. The Web3 industry kind of made us think like those are bad things, but in reality, whatever works is best. So keep that in mind and use it to your advantage, not as a limiter for your project. Pick the platform, very important. Be consistent with it. Make sure that even if it's either fragmented or it becomes an issue, like player, user, community members always comes first. So based on their needs, find the solution that fits their needs the most. And finally, test the tactics. We have given you a lot of tactics that you guys are already aware of, but even if you know them in head, if you don't actually try them out with a goal in mind, with actually trying to monitor the results, it wouldn't really work. So make sure to always keep those tactics in mind and practice them. And yep, that is it. Thank you so much for this very long session, actually, but it was really great. And if you have any questions, I guess, yeah, then we're taking on to the, yeah, I'll hand it over to you, Jake, actually, I guess.
Cool, lovely. Thanks so much, Hoon. If we do have questions, please fire away. If you need to jump, please, you're allowed to jump, or you can stick around if there's any questions. But in general, Hoon, thank you so much. That was super insightful, and I think some really good advice at the end. Are you able to share the slides, or do you want to keep them private?
I can share them. No worries.
Okay, cool. If you share them with me, I can send them on to everyone on their Slack groups.
Okay.
But yeah, are there any questions? So long. There we go. Sukmeet, over to you.
Right.
Hey, sorry for bugging you.
No worries.
So I saw that you are also gamer, and I also saw that your previous projects were on GitHub, but we couldn't find anything regarding this. So are you going to be open sourcing, and are you like when are you thinking of releasing it? Is it something that we can integrate?
Right. So, short question is, which one is closed source? The game itself is closed source because we use a lot of like actual in-house art assets, and those are subject to copyright, which is always a challenge. However, the API, the Trepe SDK would be open sourced, and the app would be partially open sourced. That is still under due. So for now, we're just prioritizing the which one's native integration, because based on our just internal resources, that's the most efficient way to deliver everything. And we're also going for a fundraiser as well, so that's where we're prioritizing. So in terms of integrating, not so open integration, not anytime soon. Probably in the long future. Well, I say long, but like Web3 long, so probably like a year or so. Within a year, if even better. But we are actively looking for partners to like have also another native integration. So if you think you can benefit from this platform, if it's interesting to you, I'm more than happy to open the discussion. Though, we're definitely open to having discussions.
Thank you.
And I'll also share the Team Steps GitHub organization as well. Not that it's relevant to this talk, but I think it's good for reference. All right. Any more questions? No. Good.
Yep. Are there any more questions? Cool. If not, I'll stop the recording there. Thanks so much, Hoon. That was really, really great.